All right, everybody, welcome to The Lawyer Show. I am your lawyer, Jeremy Rosenthal, and The Lawyer Show is our weekly podcast from 12 to 1. It is by lawyers, for lawyers, and those who have a morbid curiosity and want to peek in at what lawyers do and some of the things that we kind of say at the water cooler, our complaints, good, bad, ugly, all and everything in between. And so today, I've got a very special guest. I say that every week, and it just happens to be true every week. And I've been looking forward to talking to this guy for a long time. And so let me introduce your lawyer today, as well as mine, Judd Leach. And let me tell you a little bit about Judd, and I'm going to give everybody just a real quick background here because we're going to have a lot of ground to cover. Judd is probably one of my favorite humans running around the planet, and he is a ridiculously nice, interesting, fascinating guy that if Judd doesn't like you, you just kind of need to look in the mirror and figure things out in your life. But I'm going to kind of brag about Judd here for a little bit because we could spend really the whole hour here and Judd not talk about himself this way because Judd just doesn't do things like that. So Judd is a professor of business law at Tarleton State University, and Judd's path to this to his current role is this. And I know Judd and I were friends in law school. That's how we got to know each other. We bonded by Judd making extremely good grades and me complimenting Judd on his extremely good grades, and wondering how can I make good grades like Judd. And Judd kept telling me how to do it. He said, you just have to work hard, and I kind of felt like I was. Judd works really hard and is really smart. That helps. I had the good looks. That's all I had going for me. But Judd graduated first in our class at SMU Law School, and then Judd worked for some years at one of those really big, tall building law firms in downtown Dallas, where he did a lot of transactional work, and after having done all these things, Judd basically said, "I'm going to be happy with my life." Not that the big firm isn't a happy way to existence, but that's why Judd went and is teaching kids now and influencing lives. And so you don't see a whole lot of people who are being valedictorian at SMU Law School is not a lot of people get to do that. And so anyway, I want to talk a lot about that today. And Judd also played for the Longhorns, so we're going to kick him in the crotch about that too. Judd, introduce yourself and talk to us and tell us. Just let's start because I've already done all the introducing. Tell us about your family and where you're from. We'll start there.
Okay. Well, I am Judd Leach, and you said I'm their lawyer. We should be clear that I don't represent anyone. See? Jeremy, you've already missed this one opportunity.
Well, I feel like this is, well, they would have to pay you.
Yeah, well, no one pays me anymore, so as a state employee,
okay,
I've given up money. I gave it up for a higher purpose. I do want to make some corrections.
Sure. Oh no, don't do that. Okay, but go ahead. Yes, correct.
And then I'll tell you about my family. But first I want to thank you for giving me this chance to disappoint a lot of people I don't know. Usually I just disappoint people I do know, and so now I'll have a chance to disappoint a group of people as total strangers, and I don't get a chance to do that a lot. So here we go. I actually wasn't first in the class. I was third. I high scored. I was first on the bar exam. That was my.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that you were first on the bar exam. But how do you live with yourself being third out of a class of however many uber and see, and it's not like you're third. in the class of Nowhereville High School, right? You know, you're third at SMU Law. There's a lot of really aggressive, dorky people like me living in the library morning, noon, and night. So anyway, okay. So you were only third at SMU. You were first in the bar exam. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
But keep going.
Yeah, that was my parlor trick. So actually, I remember number 1 and number 2, Alexis Dixon and Sarah Lee, both very, very, very smart students and very, very nice people generally. So if on the chance that they're listening, I want to make sure that they get credit. Alexis was first, Sarah was second, and then the bar exam was just a parlor trick. And that's what comes from working hard, because I'm certainly not smarter than your average bear, but I did put in a lot of hours in the bar. Jeremy, I grew up 60 miles from where I'm sitting right now. So I'm, for those who don't know, Tarleton State University is in Stephenville, Texas. And this university's been here for a little over 100 years. I grew up in Brownwood, Texas. So I grew up right down the road. In fact, Brownwood and Stephenville were huge sports rivals back in my day. So much so that when we made the decision to move here, I actually paused for a minute because I thought, I can't live in Stephenville. These are our enemies, but of course they're not. They're just normal people, or as normal as you can get these days. So,
is Stephenville the Yellow Jackets?
It is, yes.
I think they had and Art Briles was coach forever and ever.
He was. He was their coach when I was in high school playing against them.
Okay.
And not that on the off chance that there's a high school sports fan or football fan, Texas high school football fan listening, Brownwood and Stephenville played each other for decades, and Brownwood always won. I mean, it was like the team you'd play for homecoming. You'd play Stephenville for homecoming. And then Art Briles showed up, and Stephenville became an incredibly competitive team, and they kind of managed to keep that. So he really kind of reinvented the culture there for winning, at least sports-wise. And so anyway, yeah, that's where Art Briles, and then he went to Houston and Tech maybe, and then Baylor, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I grew up 60 miles from here, so I'm back at least in the same vicinity of where I grew up. I wouldn't have imagined being back. If someone had told me this 10 years ago. I'm currently married still, amazingly. My wife, whom you've met, it's been a long time since but I'm still married to her. God help her. She has definitely deserved hazard pay for that. And we have 2 kids now. We've got my daughter's 16, and then at the age of 40, we decided it'd be nice to have another kid. So I've got a 5-year-old. I've got friends with grandkids older than my son. So we're going to be the old parents, at least with respect to him. So, but that's where we are now, 16 and 5, and trying to survive the zombie apocalypse.
And speaking of parlor tricks, so at SMU, you were married at the time. You were married when you were there, right? And you guys were living in the mid-cities, I want to say?
That's correct.
Okay. And you were commuting every day from Hurst, Euless, Bedford to Southern Methodist University.
That's correct. Yeah.
And that commute for all of our listeners who are, because we're nationwide, we're probably international at this point. Our 10 viewers are who knows where they are, right?
They're very spread out.
That commute sucks. I mean, that commute sucks. That's a hard one. I was living right there, and you were not a part of so you were commuting, and you were not a big part of the SMU party scene like I was, with the body glitter and the tight shirts and all those fun things. Right. So you did this all, it just never ceases to amaze me the way that you kind of challenge yourself. So let's go back to okay. So from Brownwood, you played. Was your next stop UT?
next up was UT.
Okay, talk about how bad the Longhorns suck.
Well, I think a lot of people are surprised to find out just over the years. I'm not a huge sports fan. I don't watch sports. I've never watched sports, and it's fine if you do. I don't have any problem with it. I don't really follow, except occasionally maybe a highlight here or there, but I really don't watch sports. Texas has, in the mid 2000s, Texas was, I remember their national championship team, and that was a really, really good team. That was one of those teams that if you messed up, they were going to score points off of it. And sadly enough, I think for teams like the University of Texas, they should have teams. You can't win the national title every year, but they're not even close to contention every year. And a team like that, with that kind of money and that kind of draw, really should be in the running year in and year out.
I was kidding. I didn't mean you to talk about how they actually suck, and you are.
No. I mean, I don't understand it. I don't get it because, every once in a while a team will pop up that has lived in obscurity for years, that they'll come onto the scene and it's like, wow, they've really put something together that year. Texas acts like that instead of acting like Alabama. Like, Texas, you should be Alabama, not, the University of Cincinnati.
Well, when you talk to me about when your experience playing with UT, you described it as political. Do you remember? You may not remember that, but you played with under John Makovic.
Yes.
What position did you play?
At the beginning, I was a tight end, and then eventually I moved to defensive end.
Okay, and I think you remember. I remember you telling me about that the team was really, you had assistant coaches that were kind of trying to angle for themselves a little bit more, and maybe that's kind of how I remember. Am I on the right track or no?
I don't remember that so much. I'm not saying that I didn't say that, but it's been a long time.
Sure.
I may have. No, it was. It's much more of a business. I will say that, and I think that's true of any large college program. It can take some of the joy out of the sport. Certainly, it's because our football teams. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing. But college football is a ridiculous thing in the United States. I mean, if you talk to anybody who is not from the United States and explain college football to them, it just doesn't compute. They've got national teams that don't have that kind of following. But yeah, I mean, it's much more of a regimented kind of takes a lot of the joy out of it. Now, I will say this: as far as practice goes, practice is a lot easier in college than it was in high school. I mean, you just because you don't run into each other, you don't spend as much time bashing each other's heads in. But I will tell you, and this is going to surprise some of you. Well, some of you, no one knows me. It's going to surprise you probably, Jeremy. I'm not a big football fan. I as far as it goes, I think that the sport has gotten to a point where it's hard to justify the risks that are associated with the sport. And I'm not one. I'm kind of a never say never type. But my son, who looks like a miniature me, and I have a feeling will grow up to be a pretty, not that I am this anymore, but a relatively muscular, kind of athletic kid.
Oh, go on about about how about how your son's going to look like you.
I mean, he's already incredibly handsome. Looks just like me. Handsome. He's intelligent beyond his years. Now it's funny because he looks like a miniature version of me, like physically, which means that he's probably going to grow up to be, at least from a high school football point of view, would probably be a bruiser. But I really don't want him playing because it's just hard to justify. Even if you make it to the professional ranks, which is unlikely for almost anybody. And I've known many professional football players just from the people I've known in college. Most of them don't last, which isn't unusual. They don't last in the NFL very long. The average career there is very short, and all of them came out just like. I have a very close friend who told me that one of the best days of his life was when he got cut. Yeah, and you think that'd be a low point for most people, but he's like, I was in so much pain from playing that it was just like, the decision's kind of been made for me. So I don't know. That's drifting into other territory, but
no. That's perfect. You're watching The Lawyer Show on JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network. You can catch JP, Kathy, and the Crew between 7:30 and 9 on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You're watching The Lawyer Show between 12 and 1 on Thursdays. And no, Judd, people have to understand what lawyers talk about every day. And when you come into my office and you want to ask a question about, an expunction or a non-disclosure or the most recent opinion by the Court of Criminal Appeals, you're going to hear about how Texas football sucks. That's how the practice of law, that's how we have to do it sometimes. And no, I always value your input on it. And what you say, I've heard what you've said. I've heard what you've said from other people who've you come into contact with on the planet, who are they get into sports and they're gifted, they're talented, and they just have, I don't know about a negative experience, but they get a coach who turns them off, or a situation that turns them off. I played high school baseball, that's all, and I just remember waking up every morning and my arm just throbbing, from and that was high school baseball, which is nothing. And I can only imagine the degree of if you're walking around playing for the Brownwood. What are you guys?
Lions, baby.
My bad. The Lions.
Yeah.
The Lions. If you're running around playing for the Brownwood Lions and your coach just kind of believes that the way we're going to win is we're just going to bash skulls 4 days out of the week and then we're just going to be better than you on Friday night, right? That kind of sucks.
It does. Now, I will tell you, my experience with sports generally has been very positive. Sports has opened up doors for me that may not have been opened otherwise. And it's also helped me build confidence in ways, it's starting relatively young and having some success at it, that has helped. I mean, there's no question about it. It's just that the sport that I was probably best at was football. And at some point, looking at it and thinking about, and I never suffered, to my knowledge anyway, I never suffered a head injury. I had a knee reconstructed and any number of bumps and bruises and breaks and things like that. But it's to a point where I think maybe there are other paths to take. And there are certainly other sports that every sport has the potential for injury, but not quite as much. Football inherently is a violent sport. And there's only so much you can do to ameliorate those impacts. And I will tell you, my experience going from Brownwood High School to the University of Texas, it was like walking into another planet. I mean, everybody was big, everybody was fast, and there are people, and it's gotten, and that was 20 years ago, or 20 plus years ago. Nowadays, you see these guys, and it's like, how in the world is that person moving that fast? Well, there's only so much that a helmet's going to do before the physics catch up to you. And that's my kind of concern with the sport. And I will tell you, from a business point of view, the NFL teams are concerned about parents like me, because once those kids stop playing or they start playing other sports, then eventually, that's going to be a kind of a leading indicator of what's to come for the NFL, I think. I don't anticipate Texas high school football going into, going dark anytime soon, but we'll see.
That's right. And one of the lawyers in my office, he was a guest on the Lawyer Show several weeks ago, said his name is Bo Calabas, and Bo Calabas says, he told me the other day that soccer is for countries that have not put a man on the moon. So that's kind of his 2 cents. Let's let's move on here. I want to talk about your days at the big firm. Okay, I don't know if we can name them. I don't like getting sued. I don't think they would or could. You're a lawyer.
I work. Well, I mean, I work there. I'll say it, and they can sue me. Now, I work there.
Fine. All right, man.
A lot of places.
All right, you heard it. They can sue Judd Leach. Go. All right. There you go, Mister.
And they can learn that you can't squeeze blood from a stone. So I worked for Jones Day. That's where I got my start, was at Jones Day.
Okay, and talk to me about your experience there. Tell us about what's it like to work at a big law firm. And you also did, and if you watch the Lawyer Show, our fans have subtly learned the difference between transactional law and litigation, right?
Okay.
Unlike me, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. Well, that is a form of litigation, but it's for people who, anyway, it's for people like me who talk a lot about their good looks and wear glasses like this. But when you talk about transactional law, talk about the type of law you did, and then talk about what it's like to work for the big firm at a law school.
Sure. I will tell you, I have nothing but good things to say about Jones Day, and that's the honest to goodness truth.
You're just afraid of getting sued now. Is that Pete the Cat on your wall?
Oh, that's Pete the Cat, signed by Dean. What's his name?
Man, we are big fans.
What's his name? It's Dean.
Oh, you're gonna stump me on this.
Anyway, yes, that's a Pete the Cat original from. My wife picked it up in New Orleans a few years ago, and it says, "You're not the boss of me. It's the story of my life."
Man, that's actually a really huge theme on the planet. Keep going. Okay, so big firm, big law.
Well, and I will tell you, and this is true. I think I've gotten better at this over time. But when I was in law school and looking at clerkships, I was fortunate to have a lot of clerkship opportunities. And so I had a lot of firms to choose from. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Robert Flowers. You probably know Robert, or you might remember Robert. And he said, "Okay, so you're going to go to Jones Day and which other firm?" So I was going to pick 2 over the summer. And I was like, "Why Jones Day?" Because at that time, as a law student, all of these firms looked the same to me. I mean, they were all big and they all paid well, and they all, there's all of that kind of the glossy aspects of them. And so I figured he knew more than I did, so I went there. And I really enjoyed it. I felt I felt embraced by the firm. I liked the work that they were doing, or at least I thought I did. How much I knew at the time. And so my experience overall was really a good one, but it's good in the sense of in retrospect, it's good. It's like when people talk about going to boot camp or something, and it's like in the throes of that, it probably wasn't very much fun, as you may know. But looking back on it, it's like, well, wait, there is something good about it. I worked a lot. I mean, that was the thing, and I don't know if that's necessarily true of every big firm lawyer, but it certainly isn't unusual. I worked all day, every day. It was when you work for.
Well, the law firm had a nickname.
It did.
Because you're the one that wants to get sued. I'll let you.
It was Jones Days, nights, and weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely had that reputation, but oddly, I think that's probably consistent with a lot of big firms. There are variables even within big firms. I will tell you this: when I drove out of the parking lot at night or very early in the morning, which was common, there was kind of the same group of cars there, and so mine was one of those. So even within a big firm culture, there are subcultures and other things involved, and it depends on what you're doing. I was a real estate lawyer in real estate capital markets. And the way that group was structured is we were actually pretty small. And And I think one of the reasons why is that the head of Jones Day's worldwide real estate practice was resided in Dallas. He was in the Dallas office. And I think he liked to keep the group relatively small in case you ever had a, kind of a lull in work. You didn't have to let a bunch of people go. And so I kind of appreciated it. It kept us busy, and it kept younger lawyers like me, they would give me as much rope as I could take without hanging myself. And so relatively early in my career, I was being given a lot of responsibility, had a lot of great mentors, making sure that I wasn't screwing things up. But I was doing a lot of deal work real early in my career. And part of that is because I wasn't one of 70 people in the office doing it. It was a very small group. And so, depending on the mood that I'm in, when I look back, I was very, very busy, and that can be very fatiguing because it is. My mom used to joke. She would say, I don't think she was joking. She said, "Aren't you glad you didn't go to medical school? Because you would have been on call." They had those 36-hour on calls. Like, Mom, I've been on call for years. I've never been off call at this place because if something comes up, if a deal hits the door, if it's the middle of the night, if they need you wherever, then that's what you were expected to do. Of course, you were compensated well for it, and it was a good law firm, very well run. I always thought, and so but it's not a life for everybody, and ultimately, I determined it wasn't the life for me, and that's kind of what led to me, making some moves and ending up where I am now. But the type of law I was in, again, I was a real estate lawyer. We called it real estate capital markets, which really is just kind of real estate. Try to think of the best way to explain it. Kind of real estate at a larger level. So we didn't focus on one-off transactions, although we certainly did some of those. But we represented investment funds largely, who would come in and they would buy up or sell, whatever cycle they were in, large portfolios of real estate typically. So occasionally, you would sell a building here or buy a building there, but it wasn't that unusual to sell 80 buildings at once or something like that, or some smaller portfolio. And of course, our clients were capital providers instead of capital users, which kind of cast it in a slightly different, it's a little more recession proof, not completely, but a little bit more. And so, I got to work on deals that, in any other setting, I probably wouldn't have gotten to. Bigger deals, complicated deals, you name it.
So you're watching JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network. You can watch JP, Kathy, and the Crew 7:30 to 9, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is the Lawyer Show, and you can watch us from noon to 1 on Thursdays. Let's translate some of this to JP, Kathy, and the Crew Nation, who probably manages their own portfolios, and buying and selling 80 buildings at a time is probably nothing to them. But in the off chance that they're drinking water out of the fire hose on this, let me help you break this down and make sure that even I'm understanding it, because when you say a one-off investment, that would be like Jeremy wants to buy a building. Jeremy's never bought a building. Jeremy wants to buy a building. That's and even that can be a multi-million-dollar. If you've got enough cheese to do something like that, that could be a huge transaction for an individual, right?
Right. Absolutely.
You're talking about these. Basically, you're talking about money groups that they've just and these can be, are these hedge funds? Are these retirement account or not retirement accounts? Are these trust funds for retirements?
Well,
is it? How did the money? How does the money come together?
Yeah, they can be a lot of things, conceivably. I did some work with hedge funds, although hedge funds tended their investments tended to be a little more liquid than real estate, because real estate takes some time to move around. Even if you find a buyer, it's not something that you get rid of overnight. But the way that a lot of these funds will work is you'll have a group, whatever it happens, whoever it happens to be, just some group of people, and they will go out and solicit money from investors. And those investors, so this wouldn't be unusual if Jeremy said, I want to go buy a building, but I don't have the money, so I'm going to go solicit money from friends, investors, whatever. It's the same thing. It's just on a slightly bigger scale where I may be soliciting money from retirement funds, from, state retirement funds, from foreign governments, potentially from whatever else, where they're saying, we're looking for investments. We need to invest this money. And they give it to me. And then I take that money. And so let's say I've got $1 billion or whatever it is in this fund. And then I say, okay, I'm going to go out and invest this in real estate in my case. So I'm going to go invest it. So I'll take that $1 billion, and instead of just saying I'll buy $1 billion worth of assets, I'll go out and leverage that $1 billion. So I'll borrow money against it, and then I'll go out and I'll buy $3 billion worth of property, right? And then I hold those properties, I get them, up and running, whatever they're supposed to be, get them cash flowing, and that's the money that goes back to the investors. And then after that period, usually around 5 years or so, you sell them. It's like a slow flip of a property. So a lot of the concepts that you see on HGTV about flipping or investment, fundamentally it's not any different than that. It's just at a bigger scale. So instead of saying I'm going to invest in this property and it's worth $800,000, it's like, yeah, okay, well, I'm going to invest in this property and it's worth $80 million. But the principles largely are the same. And I will tell you, my job as the lawyer doing that, and I was kind of at the ground level. When I say that, if you looked at that transaction or looked at that whole kind of flow chart that I kind of just described, there are a lot of different disciplines involved along the way. And so up at the top, you'll have people who do fund work, and that's essentially creating the companies and the investment kind of pathways into those companies. And then you get down to kind of the bottom of the structure chart, and that's really where I live, which is this is the entity that actually owns this property, and they want to sell it or buy it. And so really, it's real estate. It was real estate law 101 as far as it went for the stuff that I did. Within our real estate group at Jones Day, we had a lot of different specialties within that group. I did kind of the meat and potatoes kind of real estate stuff, but we had people who did more of the loan work. We had people who did more of the entity structuring. We had people who could deal with the fund level. And we had people who would do like the partnership stuff, dealing with who's getting paid what and when as we're bringing groups together. Mine was really the X's and O's. Mine was that part of the playbook where it's like, okay, we've got.
I thought you didn't like football.
Well,
keep going.
I still use a lot of sports analogies for someone
because they work.
They work. But really, I mean, from where I was sitting and the work that I was doing, it was traditional real estate work. It's just the property, the number of zeros after the comma tended to be bigger.
And yeah, that's a phenomenal point. I want the audience to just, what I guess I want them to understand and see with the Judd Leach story is just, so you go from working with all these zeros, right? And you go from, and we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars
or billions.
Or whatever. I mean, you say that you say that so casually, and an analogy in the criminal world, murder is basically legally works the same as assault, right? And assault can be as low as a traffic ticket level offense, or it can be as high as life in prison or the death penalty. Legally, it's in the same family and it works the same ways, and it's very hard to get younger lawyers to understand, guys, it's the same thing, right? Person takes an action has the result. The only difference is, in many instances, is the result is someone died, right? Is death, and that can be a lot more complicated, but it's just the gravity of the situation. But you say $1 billion so very casually, and here's where I want to go with this. You are, talk about the move to Tarleton. Talk about, how a guy who can say $1 billion transactions so casually and be moving around these huge piles of money and helping clients, appropriately do that. Talk about, there's no easier way to say it. Why? Or ask it.
Well, I enjoy poverty. I've got a hair shirt on over this that I wear around as my atonement for. Now, the $1 billion thing, though, I will tell you. Let me just put a little coda on that. If you can swim in shallow water, you can swim in deep water, right? It's swimming, and so the psychology changes because as you get more zeros at the end of that, people start getting a lot more nervous.
Mm-hmm.
But as you were saying with the salt, but the law is the same, right? It's like it's the same law. Now, you can run into complexities in transactions of that type that you don't necessarily run into, like buying a vacant lot next door. But the basic blocking and tackling of one is the same as the next. It's just on a larger scale. How did I get here? Well, it wasn't a direct route. I was to a point, and this is kind of part of the story about my experience at Big Law. I got to a point where I realized this isn't the path I want to take, and it wasn't the firm, because again, I have nothing but good things to say about Jones Day and my experience there. I learned so much as a lawyer. I had great mentors. I had good work. The people took care of me. I've got nothing but good things to say, but I knew that was going to be the death of me if I stayed there and continued burning at that rate. It was going to be problems at home. It was going to be a lot of stuff because I became very one-dimensional in that process, where it's just like you're just working, and we're not. For me, some people are better at shutting things off, and I am not. So if I wasn't working, I was worried about working. So we ended up moving to Austin. So we moved back to Austin, and I worked at a firm there, a smaller firm, but still a large firm by ordinary standards. And I did that for a couple of years, and that's about the time the Great Recession really kicked in. And I started,
or what we thought was the Great Recession at the time.
Well, that's right. Great Recession the first.
Part one.
Exactly. And I will tell you, that was the craziest thing, because that went from being reasonably busy, not like Jones Day busy, which is another category of busy, but reasonably busy, to nothing, like almost overnight. And so I started looking around at that point. I thought I need to make a change. And so I ended up going and working for the city of Austin. So I joined the legal department at the city of Austin. And I will tell you, I absolutely loved that job. My wife will tell you that's the only time she ever heard me say that I look forward to going to work.
So you don't look forward to going to work now?
Well, I look forward to going to work now. So
that's not what you said. See, we cross-examined. See, this is now we look for little loose threads, and then we hit hard. Boy, you didn't know you were coming on 60 Minutes here, did you, today?
I didn't. I didn't. I do enjoy coming to this. It's a different, but as far as like
I'm
a tradition.
Totally teasing. Yeah. But I want to hear about the city of Austin, and I want to hear what you did for them, because that's got to be a radically different experience as well from what you had done before and probably what you're doing now.
Right. No, it absolutely was different. Now I was still doing real estate, so I was an assistant city attorney, but essentially I was the city's real estate attorney. That was kind of my portfolio. And cities own a lot of real estate and have a lot of dealings with real estate. And also, I was kind of over the real estate aspects of the parks. And Austin has a lot of parks, and there's a whole host of issues. In fact, I have an article that only close people to me have skimmed, and it's in the Texas Tech, to bring it home, give you a little love, Texas Tech Administrative Law Journal, dealing with park use laws.
There's a lot of pictures in any periodical that's that's from Texas Tech University. I love the place. I like pictures. I like it. Anyway, okay, keep going.
Yeah. But anyway, that's what I did at the city, and I really enjoyed the work. I will tell you one thing that was different, like the craziest difference between what I'd been doing in the past, other than just kind of scale, was I didn't have to keep time anymore. I didn't have to keep my hours. I was there. I worked for the city. Everybody I worked for in the city was a client, and we all got paid by the same person, so I didn't have to bill hours. And I did not miss doing that for a minute. The days were more reasonable as far as, what you could get through. Everything wasn't on fire all the time. And I really enjoyed the people I worked with then. And
Again,
again,
you know where I'm going with this. Why do you hate all the people you work with now?
Well, if you met some of them, you would know.
Oh my God. I'm glad they're not watching. Because they don't have electricity in Stephenville. That's another joke. But yeah, now see, I'm miles and miles away. They can't get here.
They
so
can't touch you.
Yeah, and not that they would know how to even, Anyway, keep going. Okay, so City of Austin.
I have been lucky. Let me say this: I have been lucky in my career to have been surrounded by good people with whom I get along everywhere I've worked, including here. In fact, I brought this up in a faculty meeting once where we were about to have a change of leadership. And I told them, I said, that's my concern. It's real easy to ruin a culture. It's hard to build culture. It's real easy to destroy it. And in the College of Business, like, these people aren't just colleagues. I like these people. I hang out with these people. If they need something, I'm there. If they need something, if I need something, they're there for me. And so, I've been lucky. I keep waiting for that luck to run out where you work for someone or around people you absolutely hate. But so here's the story that you're driving for. So I'm at the City of Austin, and I really, really enjoy the work. My wife at the time was at the time working for a research group at the University of Texas, and I just started thinking she's more of a traditional academic type, and I thought, and so every once in a while during breaks I'd be looking for faculty positions, and one came up here at Tarleton. And it looked like it was written for her. I mean, it's just it matched her education and interest and everything. And so, long story short, because this story can go on forever, she applied and she got the job. But then I couldn't find anything to do in Stephenville, so there was that issue. And so she had to turn down the job. And long story short, they came back and offered it to her again. And so at that time, this position came open. So it was just like it was meant to be. This business law faculty position came open at the same time. And we were both able to move here and be on the faculty. So,
that's what we call in Yiddish, we call that kismet. And I know that Yiddish is big in Stephenville.
It is bigger than it's not. But
okay, so I've never been to Tarleton State. I don't even know if I've been to Stephenville. I've driven close enough. You guys have some nuclear reactors there, or close?
That you were within about 30 minutes of
okay.
That's Glen Rose.
Now, Glen Rose, yes. And so my the only thing I've heard about Stephenville, and you tell me if I'm right or not, is I hear that the guys, I hear that they wear their Wranglers so tight you can tell what religion they are. That's all I know about it. Again, another. This is a family network. You're listening to JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network. This is the Lawyer Show. We're on from noon to 1 on Thursdays. You can watch JP, Kathy, and the Crew 7:30 to 9 Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I want to talk about your class. I want to talk about what you teach. I want to talk about a day in the life because I'm guessing you're not billing hours right now. Talk to us about teaching.
Well, teaching, I've always enjoyed the idea of teaching. That's something that I tried when I was working in, especially like at Jones Day, I try to spend a lot of time with our young lawyers and with our clerks because, and I realize how hokey this probably sounds, but there were a lot of people who took an interest in my career and really sat down and taught me stuff. And so I would try to do the same thing, and it was gratifying to do it. So teaching is different, and this is not law school. These are business students, most of whom will not go to law school. Not that they couldn't necessarily, but it's just not on their radar. And so, going through and figuring out, how do I teach these students something that will benefit them as business people without it being like law school? Because, as a law student, you're learning so much and the details and the exceptions to the exceptions and all of that stuff. But at this level, it's like they don't really need to know all of that. So how do you package what you know and meet them where they are? And so it has had its challenges, but it's been a lot of fun. I teach 4 classes a semester. I have a business law 1 and a business law 2. Those are the 2 classes I teach. And we essentially cover soup to nuts. I mean, it goes from, what is the law to contracts, torts, some criminal law, not a whole lot. I try to tell them this, if you can, business people can commit crimes too. Let's just leave it at that.
Oh, yes. And that's when Judd Leach sends them to me.
That's right. You're my go-to if they get in trouble up in the Metroplex.
We go statewide, man. I go everywhere.
Well, I'll keep that in mind. And we get into stuff like secure transactions and agency principles and bankruptcy. I mean, again, it's kind of it's a survey level treatment, and we break it into two classes. In most semesters, I have somewhere between 180 and 220 students total. And yeah, I mean, we go through the ropes, and I try to convince them to start thinking about stuff, like learn how to think, especially learn how to recognize when you don't know something, right? Because it's that notion of the known knowns. You know what you know, and there are times you know what you don't know, and in either one of those situations, you're actually in a pretty good place. It's when you don't know what you don't know that you blunder in and make mistakes. And I've had clients do that over the years, and these were clients who had money and access to things that the average Joe doesn't, and they would make some of these boneheaded errors, and you think, why in the world would you have done that? Why didn't you ask someone first? And so I try to equip them with just enough knowledge to where kind of a light will blink in their head, and they'll think, I better ask someone about this. Am I missing something? And I tell them, don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to admit you don't know something, because there's strength in that, believe it or not. It doesn't make you look dumb. It makes you look smart in the end, because if you don't know, then you can find out. And it's been an interesting time. I mean, we have our students.
Let me stop you there, because I want to make a point that and kind of expound on one of the concepts you just said. One of my experiences, I always, when I'm picking a jury, I look for small business owners, and I look for other types of business people who may, if they're not a small business owner themselves, maybe they lead a small group, or maybe they're the head of a medium-sized unit or a small-sized unit. And the reason being is because they tend to, I really pay extra attention to them on jury selection, because those are all potential foremen of your jury, because those are people who want to sort of command a small group, and they don't know what they don't know. And, well, that didn't come off right. I don't know what I just said. I don't know what I don't know. But the point, but I think you're smelling what I'm stepping in. Yeah. What I'm saying is that sometimes they don't recognize what they don't know. They may fear looking weak. They may fear looking like they don't have the answers. They may fear losing control of that group dynamic. And so you always have to pay special attention to those types of individuals, in my view, when I'm picking a jury, for the reason that person that person's going to go over and take over in your jury room. And if they're against you, you can forget it. If they love everything that you're throwing out there, then you might consider putting them in there, or if you just want to drive everybody nuts, you put two of them in there and then you let them fight it out. But yeah, I can't tell you how important I see that as being from, just from a small business owner standpoint, and this developed over time, over the cases and cases and cases and cases that we try. And again, another big part of the lawyer show is me talking about all the push-ups I can do. And to Vanita Parker, who was my guest last week, she asked me how many push-ups I could do because I kept saying that. These are lawyer push-ups. They're figurative in nature. But the point is that...
yourself up out of your chair?
What's that? Yeah.
Does this count as a push-up when I get out of my chair?
That I'm lucky if I get that these days. But yeah, the point being is... I think your point's really well taken, that to be able to go out and ask and, what, like you're saying, recognize the issue, because that's, it's when the ship sails in the night past the port that's the problem, right? It's the,
right.
But I'll let you keep talking because you're more interesting than I am, and you're better at explaining these things.
That makes me sad for both of us, Jeremy, but... No, that's the thing, and I've told them as a lawyer, I said there have been plenty of times in my career where someone on the other side has proposed something, or they've drafted something in a contract, whatever it is, and I read it, and I'm like, you know what? I don't understand what you're saying. I don't get it, and I'm reasonably smart, and I'm pretty good at reading comprehension, and I think if I can't understand this, then that's something you need to fix. And I told them, like, don't worry about doing that. If that makes me look dumb, fine, but I'd rather look dumb that way than have something screw up and then have to explain to a client that I walked them into something because I didn't understand it. It's like, it's fine. And as it happens, every time I told someone I don't get this, typically they would fix it to the point where it's like, now I get it because now the words make sense. But that's the secret. I mean, like in Business Law 1, I will tell you just kind of at a more detailed level, we spend a lot of time talking about contracts. It's not the only topic we cover, but it is the one where I kind of squat on it for a while because they've got to know contracts because everything is contracts. Everything, almost every other discipline in business revolves around contracts. Whether you say, well, this isn't contract, it's lending. It's like, well, okay, what's that? Well, this is insurance. Well, what's that? Right? All of these things, all of these are contractual concepts. We just call them something else, and then we don't get into all of the minute detail, that granular level of offer and acceptance and this and that. But it's like, but overall, these concepts are the same. So I'm trying to equip these students not with like a pre-law education, but with when you go out and start operating your whatever business, and a lot of them will go into small business, either starting their own or being employees of one, they'll be able to recognize some of these problems. And I get reasonably good feedback from them over the years saying, we were talking about this thing and this is what happened. It's like, well, there you go. That's education at work. It's always neat when those things come together. So, but I've really enjoyed, this semester has been hard for me because I really enjoy being in the classroom with them. It's like a performance of sorts, and it's much harder to do that through a Zoom meeting. And even in a classroom with masks on, it's a lot harder to kind of have that same connection. But it beats the old time. I mean, can you imagine when we were in college or even law school if this had happened?
No. No, I really couldn't.
Been it.
I
mean, we would have just been.
And
would have marched it.
Yeah, and I worry that a lot of kids who are on the right track, who are keeping their legs churning and driving towards a goal, driving towards an education, that this derails some of them potentially permanently. I mean, you have folks who put college off for years, decades, and then they come back, or they get into it, and then this gives them an out, and then they join the workforce, and then it's just they don't have the interest. Right. 2 questions for you. We've got about 3, 4, 5 minutes left. or so. But I do have a couple questions for him. One of them you just kind of already answered, which is do you still have contact with some of your students?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Some of them have become friends. I where over the years it's like I really like these. These are people I would hang out with. I mean, in sometimes the age disparity isn't as much. Some of them were older students, but yeah, absolutely. I like to keep up with, and some of them like to keep up with me. So it's not all of them, but yeah, a handful of them, and I'm proud every time they go out and do something.
And
adulty.
I said 2 questions. That was a lie. I meant 3 questions.
Okay.
Do they know? And this is a family network, so I think I can say this. Do they know what a badass you are?
Oh, I remind them every opportunity I get.
I doubt
I'll
that.
threaten them.
I doubt that.
I'll bait their parents. They'll bait their moms. It's great. No, they don't know. I will tell you, they
I mean, do they know that you were first on the bar exam?
Some of them know that, but Jeremy, if someone had told you that when you were 19 years old, would that have meant anything to you?
Oh,
I wouldn't have even known what bar exam it was. I would have thought the guy drank too much.
But that's
bar exam,
how many people take the bar at a time? 3,500?
I think that there were. I don't know. It depends. I think in the summer test, it's probably something like that, and then in the February, it's probably over 1,000. So
that's all you beat is just over 1,000. Whatever. I mean, that's anyway.
They weren't trying hard enough.
My last question for you before we go: you ever think of hanging out a shingle? And do you have? I don't know if you have the time to do that or not, or have you ever thought about doing any pro bono work, even if you're not thinking of hanging a shingle?
That's a great question. I don't think I would want to hang a shingle anymore. And frankly, I don't know if I ever wanted to do that. I kind of like working in the firm setting. Right now, I would be concerned, at least with kind of my background, that it would take more time. Like I've got a good friend and colleague here who still does some work on the side. He does probate work, and the stuff he does, he can kind of do efficiently and still get it done. Whereas if I got in the middle of some big deal, it could drain a tremendous amount of time. But pro bono work, honestly, I should do more of that. I really should. There are needs.
So JP, Kathy, and the crew. You can watch JP, Kathy, and the crew 7:30 to 9, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You're watching the Lawyer Show on the JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network. You can see us between noon and 1. In English, pro bono means free, right? It's work that lawyers are encouraged to do charitably. I do pro bono work. The difference is I don't know that I'm doing it at the time. I just know that it's pro bono when the bill doesn't get paid a little bit later.
Retrospectively pro bono.
But yeah.
There are
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you.
I was going to say, there are needs to be met in any town. There are legal needs that aren't met. People probably go to lawyers with less frequency than take the probably out. People go to lawyers with less frequency than they go to dentists or the nail salon or a bunch of other, we need, there is a demand for legal assistance. And in a town like this, I really should do more, and I think about it, and then I just drift off. And that's something that I'm being self-critical as I should be. I need to do more. I just haven't done as much as I should.
Well, the question was designed solely to make you feel guilty, and having accomplished that having obviously accomplished that, I think that takes us about to the end of our time. 30 seconds. Parting shots. Any last thing you want the planet to know?
At this time, let's all start rowing in the same direction, right? As a country, perhaps, so that we can get out of our caves and start actually talking to people. Because I'm going to go insane if I'm trapped away from people for too long. So I need everyone to do their part. Now, be good to each other. How about that? That's my parting shot.
I love it.
Be good to each other.
I love it.
Be
All
good to
right.
yourself.
Ladies and gentlemen, Judd Leach, thank you for watching The Lawyer Show. Goodbye.